and PhD, Head of Tourism Department of Polytechnic Negeri Bali. And now we will move on. Thank you, Ibu. Once again, we will move on to the next speaker.
Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, joining us today from the beginning, as introduced earlier, is co-founder and director of Planet Happiness, Dr. Paul Rogers. When I visited the website of Planet Happiness, Paul, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm very delighted to learn a very strong message saying that our response to the COVID pandemic, enabling destinations to build resilience and recover from a global crisis like no other. So Paul also have 5 key of COVID-19 recovery benefits for 8 destinations. So we are definitely very delighted to hear further from you, Paul, for the next 15 minutes on your presentation. So please, now the floor is yours.
Let me just get my... Great. Thank you very much, Erica. Honourable representative from the ministry, Mr. Kendra Negara, the Vice Governor, the Director from the Polytechnic, my longtime friend Christine, Professor who just spoke there, and other distinguished speakers and participants. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today, building on these excellent presentations that have come before. So yeah, I would like to talk to you about Planet Happiness. It might seem a little bit strange to be talking about happiness when Christine has given us this frightening overview, really, of the impacts to this sector that we're all passionate about and enjoy working in so much. Now, when we think about recovery moving forward, tourism has always been a very competitive sector, and destinations are going to be competing with one another to build back better. And the representative from the ministry talked about the need for destinations to have a solid reputation. And to me, this means building back as safe and healthy places to live and visit. And to implement these green protocols we've just been talking about, best practices, that means destinations need to engage all their stakeholders, from many elements of government, from many elements of the private sector, but not just industry related, residents, the residents of destinations. Governments, destinations need to illustrate they are looking after their people with health and safety protocols and industry recovery. This means creating great places to live. Great places to live are great places to visit, and this is where the happiness agenda comes in. Now, I use the term happiness. We can also use the term well-being or quality of life interchangeably. And Planet Happiness is a project of the Happiness Alliance, a non-profit registered in the US 10 years ago. And they are very much focused on this well-being agenda. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development are heavily focused on alternative indicators to gross domestic product to promote greater sustainability. In the middle there, we have the UAE each year has been convening a World Government Summit, and they include a global dialogue on happiness. Now, with reference to that, the summits in the UAE, we can draw direct relevance here to Indonesia, where one of your honourable ministers spoke in 2018, pointing out that Indonesia's planning department sees the pathway to the sustainable development goals in being in this happiness pyramid, if you like, or that the pathway to the SDGs is happiness. And of course, in Bali, you have your Tri Hitara Karana philosophy, which is an embodiment of this happiness and well-being agenda. So Planet Happiness was started as a project 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, when the theme of over-tourism was of growing concern to destinations around the world, not least Bali. And at the same time, critics, commentators recognize that if you're going to solve issues of over-tourism, just as solving issues of building back better, you need to engage your residents. And I would argue that with growing global interest in this happiness and well-being agenda, all EU member states are involved in some form of happiness measurement and policy making. New Zealand is illustrating the way forward for many advocates of this compelling agenda. So Planet Happiness has readapted its approach to offer 5 key COVID recovery benefits, which are about positioning well-being, using well-being storylines from residents to illustrate to your market that you are a great place to live, you are looking after your residents, and creating great places to live for longer stay visitors, which I'm sure will happen as a consequence of the pandemic, and a great place to visit. Now, I'm going to go through quite quickly here. Now, I've been a destination planner for the last 20 years. I've been honored to do many assignments for UNWTO in this regard. And if we are looking at planning or managing tourism, we engage all different elements of the government, of the private sector. But up till now, I would argue that a missing link has been reaching out to the residents and illustrating to the residents or bringing the residents along with tourism planning. So the mission of Planet Happiness is to focus the attention of all stakeholders, all tourism stakeholders, on the well-being agenda and use tourism as a vehicle for development that demonstrably strengthens destination sustainability and the well-being of the quality of life of the host communities. So it's really about engaging host communities. So how can we engage host communities? Well, we do this with an online best practice happiness index survey that is OECD recognized as a best practice measure of individual well-being. And this is based on Bhutan, the founders, if you like, or the birthplace of gross national happiness. Around 10 years ago, they developed a measure of well-being with these 9 different domains. We call them community, environment, access to lifelong learning, the arts and culture, trust in government, physical health, access to health. And then with a review of international best practice, satisfaction with life, engagement with work were added. And we have also have another area of questions around tourism and the extent to which residents are satisfied with the way the sector is being developed. Whether or not it's reinforcing culture and providing opportunities, job opportunities to local people. Now, at the end of taking this survey, we have it in 25 languages, including Bahasa Indonesian. Each survey taker gets a personal happiness scorecard comparing their score in blue with everybody else in black. So this sparks conversations about how happy individuals are. You can compare with your family, with your workmates, and at the same time, you start to understand what we mean by measuring happiness, well-being, and quality of life. So just as we can have individual scorecards, if we're going to deploy this survey in Bali, for example, we can then get a happiness scorecard for Bali, comparing the residents of Bali with all other survey takers. Now, from a destination planning perspective, I think this gets more interesting when we take away the comparison with everybody else. We stack the scores from low to high, and we can see where the residents are strongest with their domains. And in this case, it's satisfaction with life and the environment, their local environment. So, green indicators there. And their weakest, their deficiencies are on access to lifelong learning, the arts and culture, work-leisure time balance, and sense of community. So we can engage with these stakeholders through these one-page scorecards, and we can say, well, what needs to happen in these deficient areas to improve your quality of life? How can tourism be built back better? What tourism-related interventions are needed that are going to strengthen these deficiencies. So then projects, programs are implemented just as they are with any destination management plan. And a year later, or whatever the time frame should be, we can redeploy the survey and continue to engage people in conversations about measuring happiness and building the well-being of host communities. So while we have these one-page scorecards that can be distributed through media, social media, quite simply, and the survey through social media, we have to remember this is a big data project, and that backing up this data is a wealth of data that can be used to highlight well-being related issues with tourism issues, and use this information to align and build trust between governments, local communities, and the private sector. So we're helping to build alignment and synergies to build wonderful places to live and celebrate those destinations. Now we have a 10-step process. I don't have the time to go into this in detail today, but it's about building local capacity to manage this process moving forward, often in partnership with local universities and research departments, and empowering local stakeholders to manage this process. We sign a simple 1.5 page agreement. It's not a legally binding agreement. It is just recognizing the roles of each party in this process moving forward. We offer training and capacity building around the well-being agenda. Before the survey is deployed, there needs to be some awareness raising on site so that the residents know what's happening and they're keen to take the survey. So moving on, looking at SDGs. Now, World Bank colleagues have recognized that there are strong linkages between the well-being agenda and the SDGs, and they asked us to prepare a presentation that illustrates these linkages. The slide I showed earlier from Indonesia, from your government, illustrates these linkages as well as this one here. This is just a quick illustration. There is a more detailed presentation behind this for anybody that might be interested, all freely available on our website. Now, we have been up and running for a couple of years. As I mentioned, we have partnerships with 17 destinations in many countries around the world with all sorts of conversations moving forward. We are members of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. They have destination sustainability criteria that regularly talks about well-being, tourism contributing to the well-being of residents. Now, where we come in is we define well-being and we measure well-being. And so through these linkages, we reassure partners around the world that we're dedicated to sustainability and supporting tourism marketing, positioning, and promotion. We have project sites in Thailand, in Canada, Africa, and other sites in Asia that we're working with. Now, with regard to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the global peak body for the industry sector, you may know that WTTC over the last 30 years have been measuring the economic impacts of tourism and advocating this to governments to get more political support for the sector. Now, with the sustainability agenda, they recognize they need to move into other areas of measurement. And they have recently released this video talking about the social impacts of tourism. Well, we've been in conversation with the WTTC over the work we are doing, and they have written in support, recognizing and acknowledging the value of our work in measuring these wider impacts of tourism on communities and trying to produce evidence to illustrate how tourism benefits the environment and social development indicators in the way that I've been describing. Now, very quickly, we are also working with corporates to bring in artificial intelligence systems to the process that I've just explained, that will connect survey users with their apps, with multi-facing dashboards that government departments will have. And this, in short, will allow for the co-creation of interventions and the shortening of feedback loops to improve the efficiency of the implementation of policies and other specific interventions. I'll cut that short, that further conversation of that. We also have a partnership, and I hope this is of interest to Bali. We have a partnership with program makers that are responsible for programs like MasterChef, and they are looking for new scenarios to illustrate linkages between organic agriculture and good agricultural practice with tourism. And the theme here is to profile local heroes, the growers, the producers of fine foods, and bring this into the well-being agenda to help market and promote destinations. And I'm sure Bali has a range of agricultural connectivities to the tourism sector. You have wonderful landscapes that could be portrayed in this type of marketing initiative. And this is all about real performance marketing and ensuring that when people are thinking about visiting Bali, they may look for tours. Well, a couple of days later on their YouTube link, they would get a link to a local hero producing their food in Bali. So running through very quickly there, I hope that's been of interest. We welcome the opportunity to discuss further with Bali and work with Bali, should there be interest, to help you build back better and illustrate to your tourists that you are a wonderful place to live and a wonderful place to visit. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. So that was very comprehensive and details. It emphasizes more on bringing back a healthy and a safe place to live and visit. So development needs to engage all segments, including government, policy, private sectors, industry, as well as community or residents. And then we need to focus on the attentions of all stakeholders for the development. And the well-being, I noted here, pragmatic slide says that happiness and well-being can be measured and integrated in evidence-based policy making, as you show earlier on the gross national happiness index in Bhutan, as well as the scorecard, which is very comprehensive. And the survey now is possible. It's available in 34 different languages, as well as needs only 15 minutes to complete the survey. So, and you also mentioned that there is a very close connections or linkages between SDGs and happiness domain. So it confirms that sustainability is very close to happiness. So it is possible to build back and better. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. So to build back and better. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. So all panelists as well as participants, we now move on to the last